All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Irene Gao. I'm the Executive Director of Courage California, and I'm really excited to welcome you to tonight's virtual town hall, Beyond Prop 50, the Road to Accountability and Taking Back the House in 2026. So before we get started, a couple notes. We may or may not have time for question and answers. So if you do have questions, feel free to either put them in the chat or in the Q&A function that you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And also I want to mention that today we wanted to make this town hall as accessible as possible. And so we are providing ASL interpretation and Spanish interpretation. So a couple things before we dive into the election results and talk about what they mean and sort of what we're going to look ahead to, I do want to acknowledge a couple of things. First, I do want to acknowledge that a lot of people are struggling right now with rising costs and have a lot of anxiety about what next year will bring as Republican cuts go into effect and the Trump regime expands its agenda. I just want to say you're not alone, and we are fighting for you, and we're in this together, and that's part of what tonight is about. I also want to acknowledge that there's a lot of anger at congressional Democrats and other members of Congress who ended the shutdown with any guaranteed extension of the Obamacare subsidies, which means that it'll increase healthcare costs for everyone. So it's really clear at all times the work that we have ahead of us. But that's also why tonight we want to talk about how the story of Prop 50 and other November elections is really about the power of voters in California and around the country. So I'm sure folks have seen coverage of the elections. A lot of the results were called last Tuesday, which was a surprise for us here in California. But the elections have largely been painted as a partisan fight between Democrats and Republicans. And it is true that those were the choices we had on the ballots. But this election, like every election, is about the story of us as voters, who and what we fight for, and the leaders we need to pass the policies that protect our communities and our economy. So tonight, we really want to tell the story of these elections through the story of us as the voters. So before we get into things, I do want to remind folks really quickly of just sort of where we're at in terms of the election results. Let me share sort of really quickly what we're looking at. All right, so really quickly, I just want to show people, this is directly from the California Secretary of State. So this shows you a sense by county throughout the state what election results are. But as folks can see, right now, yes is currently at just about 64% and no at 36%. So this result has stayed pretty steady over the last week and a half since the election was called on Tuesday. And it's pretty astounding. And I do want to take a moment to actually quickly celebrate. A 30-point win margin was even exceeded the expectations of what we had seen in the polls leading right up into the election. And a 30-point margin is a really strong result and a really strong signal about what California is known for. And you'll see here that there were early predictions that voter turnout was going to be around 50%. And with some ballots that are still left to count, it looks like we will get to right about 50%. But obviously, the higher the voter turnout, the better. I also want to quickly show this as well, just to give people a sense of the movement that happened between the 2024 presidential election and this election. So just 1 year apart, you'll see that the maps are fairly similar, but you'll also see that there is some movement. So also, unlike what pundits are saying, this Prop 50 election was not about people on the coast versus people who are inland. You'll see that the results are much more complicated, much more nuanced than that. So again, this paints a very different story than what pundits are saying out there, no surprise. And then the last thing I want to show as well is, while, I mean, give or take, or I always want to take exit polls with a little bit of a grain of salt. They do provide some interesting insights. So these were exit polls that NBC News provided the day in the evening of the election. And so I wanted to point out a few key areas here. You'll see they have the exit polls broken down by gender, how people identified by race, by age, and then instead of looking at partisanship, because partisan was in some ways very clear cut, wanted to show in terms of how people identify themselves in terms of uh, ideology. So from very liberal to very conservative. So again, this shows probably not a whole lot of surprises, but again, a more interesting story than what folks were showing. So again, we are still waiting for ballots to be counted because of course here in California, the deadline for votes to be counted was yesterday. So there's still some more data that will be coming out and a lot more we want to dive into. But for now, again, like these results have held pretty steady for the last week and a half, and I don't expect them to change a lot. And so I'm really excited to unpack sort of what these results mean across the state, but what they also mean for us as we look into what 2026 is going to look like. But before we get like into a deep dive on Prop 50, I do want to welcome Lindsay Farrell, who's the from National Working Families Party. So both Working Families Party and a lot of us who identify as Dems and as members of the Working Families Party, we had a lot of victories to celebrate. So Lindsay's here to speak with us about what those sort of election results look like across the country, and also put Prop 50 in the context of what the election's results as a whole sort of mean. So again, this is getting beyond sort of what you've heard from pundits, but really again from the viewpoint of voters. So Lindsay, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's y'all have to bear with me. It's 8:30 or 8:43 here. I live in Connecticut. My name is Lindsay. My pronouns are she, her. I started with Working Families Party in 2004 as a door-to-door canvasser because I didn't want George Bush to be president anymore, and have held a lot of different roles at the party since then. And right now, I am our state power elections director. What that means is that I help build our electoral programs around the country, kind of based on what's the most important at that time. So in recent months, I've been doing a lot in New York, in New Jersey, in Arizona, and providing a little support to the folks in California. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully this will work without too much incident. That's working for folks. Looks good, I hope. Cool. So I see the thumbs up. Appreciate it. So and let me know. I have like 8-9 minutes. Is that about right?
Yes.
Cool. So, all right, I'm going to take us on a tour around the country in 8 minutes. So I'm going to actually start by backing way up. Working Families Power, which is a C4 that shares the WFP's mission of a more equitable economy that works for the many, not the few, has been doing a polling and research project for the last couple of years to look at what working class voters across race, across the country actually believe. And, you know, working class voters are pretty cross-pressured. This is a poll from February that shows the things that people indicated were the most important to them. And like I said, they're cross-pressured. So some of the like terminology, like keeping men out of women's sports, et cetera, that's not the way that we would frame that, but it's the way that people hear it in the news. And so that's what they have been picking. And already off the bat, controlling inflation, raising minimum wage are the two top issues, right? And those issues are like pocketbook, cost of living, like can I afford the life that I'm trying to provide for my family issues. And then from there, immigration is something that is like prevalent in the poll. But keep in mind, this is February. This is before ICE is terrorizing our communities in the way that we are so familiar with now. It's before people are seeing, you know, like school neighborhoods in Chicago tear gassed and all of the things that have become like really, really polarizing and horrific around these issues for people. So what did we win? All right. First of all, everybody knows Zoran Mamdani won. He won despite $40 million in spending from billionaires to become New York City's next mayor, right? And he won on freeze the rent, free child care, and a message of affordability in a city that's like really, really hard to make ends meet in. The largest city in the country, and people are being priced out all the time. And one really cool thing that I want to mention, because I am from the Working Families Party in New York, we have fusion voting, which means we actually are a party on the ballot and we can cross endorse candidates from other parties if we want to. Sometimes we run our own, sometimes we cross endorse Democrats. Zoran Mamdani got more votes on the Working Families Party ballot line than the Republican got at all in the city of New York, which I think shows some real growth over the last couple of decades. So if you all want to fight to get fusion in California, I am here with you. We can talk about it. I'm going to go a little bit farther south. New Jersey, we know that in New Jersey, Mickey Sherrill won the race for governor. I'm going to I show this result to show how the trends in this election like match up against recent years. So the blue blocks, those are during Democratic presidential administrations. The red blocks are Republican presidential administrations, right? And so you can see, of course, during midterms, there's always a little bit of a back and forth, right? The party that is in the White House suffers a little bit for the gubernatorial race in the year right after that election. But the bounce back that we have seen in New Jersey is quite incredible at 57% and 43%. We saw this, it's similar to the wave that we were looking at in 2017 and 2018. And since we know that we gained a lot of progress in elections for progressives in 18, that's a really good sign. I also want to narrow in on the Latino vote in New Jersey, right? A lot of has been made over the last year of how Democrats have been losing Latino voters and Black voters as well. And it's true. Like over the last couple of decades, working class voters of all races have been leaving the Democratic Party, in large part because the Democrats have failed to deliver on those economic justice issues that we care so much about. But this is quite a bounce, right? 55% in heavily Latino counties in New Jersey, 55% voted for Harris in 24, and that bounced way back to 75%. Now, that doesn't mean that the Democrats' problems are over, right? Like, this shows a real level of distress with the current administration's policies on issues across the board, right? But it shouldn't be taken for granted. It would be a misreading of these results for like the Democratic Party establishment to think that means that they are resonating with this electorate again and they don't have to deliver for it, right? I'm going to go a little bit further south to Virginia. Again, blue is the
9, 10, 11.
Blue is is a Democratic administration, red is a Republican. This is even more interesting to me because as you can see, like in 2025, the Democratic performance, the difference between Spanberger and the Republican in this gubernatorial election is huge. We have not seen in literal decades a Democrat perform this well, which shows a tremendous amount of enthusiasm for an alternative to the Trump agenda. Okay. Again, in Virginia, folks thought that they were going to pick up a couple of the delegate seats and make sure that they secured, for example, in the House of Delegates, they secured the Democratic majority. And they flipped enough that they now have a supermajority. The light blue, those were all the folks who won in last week's elections. So there is definitely like a Democratic wave coming. But you also might consider it like an anti-Trump wave, right? It is a deep, deep rejection of the Trump administration's policies on a variety of things, and probably mostly on like the reality that, as you saw in the first slide, people were counting on the administration. The people who voted for Trump were counting on the administration to make life more affordable, and it's not happening. It's only getting worse and faster than it was before. But again, this is another illustration of how high turnout was. It is like by a pretty strong margin, the strongest turnout has been for a gubernatorial election in decades. People are fired up and they want to participate in the democratic process. That is very motivating for voters right now. So we've had some other cool victories in Pennsylvania. They had 3 folks on the ballot to retain the Democratic majority on the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania. That's a big deal because if the Democrats lose the Supreme Court in the Pennsylvania, then in the 2028 election, that body, that Supreme Court body, could mess around with validating or invalidating election results for president. So this is a big win. And the slide to the left here shows the shift in Democratic performance from 2021, right, which was the first year into the Biden administration. It's over 7% of voters moving towards voting for Democrats. Some other exciting stuff. Georgia, for the Public Service Commission, I don't know if you have something similar that's an elected office here in California. It's basically the body that regulates the utilities. So like, as you can imagine, it's traditionally held by people who shill for the utility companies. Alicia Johnson and another Democrat just won statewide. And that represents a huge shift from the presidential election just a year ago, over 13%, almost 14% shift from Republican to Democratic performance in almost every county in the state. So people are fired up as far as Georgia. And in some places that are like, very flippable turf, Dayton, Ohio, Shanice Turner Sloss took on the incumbent Mims and beat him. Just earlier this week, like just a couple days ago, it turns out Katie Wilson has won for mayor in Seattle. Katie Wilson comes out of progressive activism. She founded the transit rights organization in the city of Seattle. She was 7 points down on election night, but because the ballots keep coming in, are still being counted, it turns out she's going to win probably by just shy of 2,000 votes. So this is really exciting. So lessons learned. Affordability and a bold economic message, that is what wins, right? Even these kind of middle of the road Democrats in Mickey Sherrill and Spanberger, they were talking about economic justice issues. They were talking about affordability, slightly different from the way that Zohran Mamdani was, but that was an emphasis. 2, the quality of our candidates really matters, right? Somebody who is a good communicator and is willing to do the work, that stuff really has an impact. 3, organizing matters, especially against big money, but it does mean that working folks like us can come together. We can win elections against money. 4, local power defends our communities. This is Brandon Johnson in Chicago, who's really putting up a good fight against all of the invasion that is happening in his city. But there's a lot that local officials can do to protect our communities. And 5, we got more work to do. So with that, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. I really appreciate this. I love this. Well, I'm a data nerd, so I love seeing these sorts of graphs. But again, like this helps us unpack the results a little bit more so that it's just not so clear cut and we better understand what's going on. So thank you so much for being here with us. And especially again, like joining us at a late time on your coast.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So with that, I want us to like dive deeper now into Prop 50. Of course, that's why a lot of you are here. And this is, of course, the work that brought a lot of us here on this call together. So really quickly, I want to introduce my two colleagues, Angela Chavez and Isidra Chavez from our communications team. They're going to give you all a quick overview of what Courage California did on the Yes on Prop 50 campaign. Angela?
Yes, let me go ahead. Okay. My mute button was doing weird things. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I have a quick little presentation that I can share with you all. I'll try to get through this fairly quickly. So Courage California, we hopped in on this the minute that it was announced that the legislation passed to have Proposition 50 on the ballot for November 4th. So the minute we knew it passed, that was the minute we knew we were about to have a special elections. So we went into full communications mode, digital communications mode here at Courage, focusing really on messaging, pulling from the official Prop 50 campaign, but also pulling from our partners, the feedback and the polls that we have from the communities that we work within, and just really updating our messaging with in real-time updates from what our partners and what we're hearing from the ground and what's working and not working. And then of course, in language translation and branding. For distribution, we had a lot of different ways to distribute the messaging that we had created through voter guides, our blogs, our websites. We had paid ad, earned media, social media. We created door and lawn signs. And then of course, we had a lot of engagement for the couple months that we had to work within. So that also included keeping our communities updated, creating informational graphics, memes, hopping on social media trends, doing polls, holding town halls. So with these three pieces, we really focused on these to get the message out about Prop 50 and what it meant for Californians throughout the state. So here we have our voter guide, just a little bit about it. This was the first time that we produced it in 8 languages. So this was really exciting. And with that, we got 2/3 of our users were under the age of 40, which was also very exciting because this is a guide that we were really hoping to get in young Californians' hands to ensure that they had what they needed to vote at the ballot box. We also had some C3 resources, including our voter guide resources about just what Prop 50 is, how to vote in California. And then we did a couple of informational blogs about what's at stake with mid-decade redistricting and how Prop 50 can impact the various issues that Californians really care about. And those were also translated in Spanish. That is our social media star, Isidra, which you'll be hearing from shortly. So she ran our social media, which she'll kind of go in a bit more, but I just wanted to share a couple of our top videos, which did really well. We had Instagram, that was the top video on our Instagram. And in a moment, you'll see our top video for TikTok. Yes, we're hoping for that same enthusiasm when she hops on after me. Isidra also creates our amazing graphics. So we worked on creating some great social media explainers, one of which was really popular was our burn book that really highlighted all the different Republicans that were at risk with the redistricting and really why all the reasons they should be burned in the burn book. So the ways they failed their constituents. So that is still a very popular post. I think if you haven't got a chance to see it before, please take a look at it. It's on all of our social media channels. And then we also just kind of provided folks with an overview of what was happening in the rest of the nation. It wasn't just California that was pursuing the redistricting. This was happening in other states, and reminding folks that it's not just a California proposition. It is us as part of a larger nation, as a larger community, in doing our part. And we also had ads. So we had over 600,000 people visit through our Spanish ads, for our voter guide. We had over 300K in the AAPI languages, which was a first for us. So our ads were really effective in reaching the populations that we needed them to. And here's just an overview of some of the ads. And some of our Prop 50 milestones I have listed here. I'm not going to read them all out, but as you can see, the minute the legislation was passed and we knew it was coming, we went full steam ahead in August, bringing our partners together, creating, oh, sorry. That's way late. But this is just kind of an overview of what we did, getting our partners together, making sure folks had resources, making sure, you know, if they didn't have lawn signs, creating lawn signs, needing door hangers, creating door hangers, translating a lot of different materials into different languages, producing these voter guides, producing ads, holding the cafecito to reach the Latino voters in California, and taking a lot of earned media. And with that, we are still taking earned media. So post-election, we've definitely had some media reach out for various different reasons and connecting with our partners throughout the state. Oh, and I learned recently, we also recruited 150 poll monitors, which is pretty fantastic. This was our Cafecito con Courage event that we had. So what was really great about this is we had people that were representing different parts of the state that kind of had different things moving for them in their districts. One was losing a seat, one was gaining a seat, and they were all in these areas that were the messaging was kind of wonky. The Prop 50 yes messaging wasn't getting out there as much as it should have, and a lot of it was because of language barriers, and a lot of it was because just the industries out there and what was at risk for some of them. It was really important to get the right messaging out in those communities. And here's just some earned media that we had. I believe we got a lot of Spanish, and then we also got a lot of KOGO is more of a right-leaning AM station in the San Diego area, and they really enjoy having us on. And I think Irene, our executive director, really likes being there too. And here are just some of our partners. These are our Yes on 50 partners. That was part of our coalition that we met regularly. We were always updating each other and working on our sharing resources and information together. And post-election, we are still updating our site with post-election material. It's going to be really focused on now what is happening and what's next. And a lot of that, of course, is going to be accountability at both the state and federal level. And of course, exit polls. I'm a sucker for exit polls. But that is my presentation. I'll go ahead and stop sharing and hand it over to my colleague, Isidra.
Thank you, Angela. I'm also controlling the spotlight, so it'll be a second. Okay, there we go. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Isidra Chavez, and I am the communications manager here at Courage, California, and I also manage our social media channels. So, as you can tell from the presentation, I do a lot of our videos on camera, work that we did for Prop 50, so you've probably seen my face. And so interestingly also, our Prop 50 work has been the most popular content we've had on our social media in a while, even more popular than our 2024 presidential election campaign. And that to me just proves that Californians have had enough of Trump's attacks on our democracy. So our content was seen over 2 million times across Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter through August to November, which, by the way, 3 months is not enough time to inform every Californian about this confusing and impactful ballot measure. But hey, we did it. Now, I do attribute a large I attribute the large reach that we got on our Prop 50 content to two things. The first, as Angela mentioned, was that we got on it early. And we were one of the first organizations to go hard and inform Californians about this confusing, super last minute special election. We started very early with a graphic that broke down the roadmap to Prop 50 to become law. And that graphic was a breakdown of every step that got us to Prop 50, from Newsom's proposal to the legislature's approval to the ballot getting voted on and the new maps being replaced in 2031. And a lot of our Prop 50 content was designed with this structure in mind by offering transparency and ensuring that Californians understood the democratic process our state leaders followed to get to Prop 50 and how Prop 50 fit within the context of our state and the country as a whole. And we designed everything in a way that was easy to explain. Sometimes it was an 8-page explainer or a 2-minute long TikTok video, and sometimes it was a Twilight meme. And really, just this diversity in our content, I think, really helped people understand why voting on Prop 50 mattered so much. And the second reason why our Prop 50 content got the reach that it did was because of people like all of you here today who helped amplify the content online, who became informed by trusted sources, and then became those trusted sources for your friends and for your family. And I don't know about you all, but it has been a really rough year to be an activist, especially if you're online, if you're on social media. The doom scrolling really does feel endless sometimes, and it makes me feel like my values and morals are in the minority. But man, joy scrolling on the evening of November 4th was a beautiful reminder that democracy, basic human rights, and equality are not in the minority. Not in California, and as we just saw from the speakers before me, not in the country. So I just want to wrap up by saying that on behalf of Courage California's mighty comms team, I want to thank you all for being those trusted Prop 50 messengers online and in person. Sharing information matters. You are not in the minority, and in 2026, we have the opportunity to prove that. So thank you all for uplifting Courage California's work if you were able to see it. If not, you can continue to uplift our work. We have so much that we plan to share. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Irene.
Thank you, Isidra. I really recommend that you follow us, but that's also because I'm a huge fan of what Cecilia and Isidra put together. It's like she said, we have to speak to a lot of different voters and a lot of different voices and in a lot of different ways. And just the sheer like amount of information that was just condensed into really simple little bits was just really important in an election like this. And I think it says a lot that in polls that we saw, it went from most people not knowing what Prop 50 was in August, even into September, to towards the end in October when the last poll results were coming in. The undecideds were like 1 to 2%, which is again, like insane for a whirlwind election that happened in just a matter of months. But I also want to provide you some insights and some nuance from some of the partners that we work with on the ground. And I want to also mention that these are partners that we work with year round on a lot of other work. But again, like it really helped in working on an election that came together so quickly to work with partners who we already had a lot of work with. And so I'm really pleased to welcome Sky Allen, the Executive Director of Inland Empire United, iUnited, Kelsey Hinton, the Executive Director of Community Water Center Action, based in Central Valley, and Tanya Navarro, Organizing Director of Chispa, based in Orange County. So welcome, Sky, Kelsey, and Tanya. I'm really excited to have all of you on. So first question I want to ask you really quickly, and Sky, we'll start with you, is like, just give us a quick summary of what your Prop 50 work looked like. But also, what were you sort of hearing in the direct voter contacts that you were having with people in the Inland Empire region?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for making time to join us. So IE United is a table that does work on the ground in San Bernardino and Riverside counties. So our perspective around this election was to talk directly to people in our surrounding community. So we did not have the expertise to do the social media like Courage does, but we did a lot of phone banking, we did a lot of canvassing and some texting to follow up with the people that we were talking to throughout September and October about this election. And those conversations, as Irene said, were really powerful over the 2 months. We started in September, and a lot of people were saying they maybe heard about this, but weren't super clear. And they weren't sure if they were going to be voting. And then in October, 3 out of 4 people that we spoke to, once we said Prop 50, they said, yes, I'll be supporting this. And that was really consistent throughout the month of October in a really powerful way. Of course, people are experiencing so many things right now, especially in that final week, once SNAP started to be impacted and WIC impacted by the shutdown. There was a little bit of, I support this measure. I'm not sure if I'm going to be voting because of everything else happening, but because we were able to be out in the community to have those personal conversations and really encourage people to either vote at home or how to support them in voting in person if that's really powerful for them, that we were able to mobilize a lot of people. And just to tease a little bit, we had a really good turnout in support in the IE. In Riverside County, 56% of voters ended up showing out in support of the measure. And in San Bernardino County, 57% showed out in support. And just for context, both counties voted for Trump last year. So we can see that people are complicated, their feelings vary over time, and those in-person conversations really matter, especially when there's moneyed interests that want to kind of muddy the waters and confuse them. So our path through was to just talk to people and share what we knew and what we believed in, and found that like you see that I said that a lot of our community share those values. So we're really proud of our community and of being able to kind of do that education, and that's our mission and what we'll continue to do.
Kelsey, how was it in the Central Valley, which of course, huge region, so that's also a big question, but from your
Yeah.
experience, yeah, tell us about how it went.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just to clarify, I'm our political director. We have an incredible executive director, Susanna Dianda. No, which is an honor to be in the ranks of her. But definitely get to do a lot of cool work in my role. And I'm like smiling and so happy for everything that you're sharing, Sky. And I'm like, we focus in Tulare County, and I will start with ultimately what I see as a positive. We did not vote yes in Tulare County, but we had 44% of the vote turning out for yes, and that's a huge deal. Tulare County is a deep red Republican conservative county in California. And the fact that we had, I'm looking at the data, it's 38,000 people show up to vote in this special election, let alone vote yes, to actually make sure that we're bringing in some people in the future elections who are representative of their needs. I think is showing it's building on the momentum that's been happening cycle after cycle, as where we've really been focused on this congressional district, which overlaps Tulare County in the southern San Joaquin Valley. It's David Valadeo's seat. We continue to see momentum moving forward. If people want change, they're ready for change. And I think that to us, that's what we were hearing in this campaign too. We also were out knocking on doors. We were primarily talking to folks. We knocked on over 26,000 doors. And around 73% of those were voting yes on Prop 50. But again, it was very similar to what Sky's sharing. When we started those conversations in mid-September, it was like, Prop what? Oh, I've seen the no on Prop 50 signs, because Republicans are very organized in Tulare County and the San Joaquin Valley. They are ready with the signs. But we had really strong and positive conversations once people understood what this measure was about. And I think we're excited to just keep building on that momentum going into next year because this is going to continue to be an important area for us, both in congressional races, but just in general. And I forgot I didn't share, but Community Water Action Fund, we're a 501c4 based out of Tulare County in the Central Valley. And we really work to connect the power building of elections and the politics back to drinking water in the valley and how those things are so closely tied together that it's the people who represent you who are really determining if we have safe water and the resources for that. So that's why we are in this heavy conservative area. It's where we have some of the worst water contamination, but we also see a lot of appetite for change. People who are really happy that we were coming to their house of like, maybe they're not in a set districts, like they're unincorporated, and they're like, wow, no one ever comes to our house. No one's ever here to have these conversations. And we want to keep being an organization that does that because we know that it's every single conversation that moves us closer to our goal of a more progressive valley and state. So yeah, we were primarily on doors, but we did do some really fun things. We did a few billboards. We did 2 digital billboards and 3 static. So Imelda, our field director, who's incredible, she will talk about this all day long. But in the valley, like your billboard or your lawn sign, they are the king of communication in the area. That is what the Republicans are extremely well organized around. So we wanted to make sure that we had something that was also showing yes on Prop 50. So we did do a little billboard work, which was exciting. And then also partnered to get some lawn signs out there. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. The only other thing before I pass it back to you, Irene, I do just want to say a huge thank you to Courage and to you, Irene, and to your team, because before anybody reached out from the Yes on 50 campaign, before all of the funding and resources were mobilized, like you all were here, you were having this conversation with us, you sent us door hangers immediately. That was a huge help. So, like your messaging and your support, just want to really say thank you and like echo again how critical that was to making sure that we really could like jump in and get running on the doors. So yeah, I'll stop there for now though.
Yeah, cheers. I mean, like I said, it's wonderful to always keep working together. But I mean, I want to underscore something that you said, which is like, these are voters, these are people that campaigns don't usually go to talk to. And these are people that you are very committed to mobilizing for elections, but also year round. And so that's, again, like ongoing thing that we'll continue to talk about. And Sky, I know you did the same. Like these are the voters you keep talking to and plan on going back to. And Tanya, I also know this is also how you guys work as well in Orange County. And it's especially key because I think you guys are at a particularly interesting intersection. You're in Orange County and you really focus on young Latino voters, which is again like a really um, high priority, like or high interest sort of section of voters here in California. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about Chispa and what you did around Prop 50 and also yeah, any interesting insights that you and your team heard from voters as you guys were having those conversations about Prop 50?
Yeah, definitely. Really happy to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya. I'm the organizing director with Chispa. Chispa, we're a membership organization. So we're an organizing and political home for young Latines. We try to build power and community in Orange County. So, our typical age range for our membership is 18 to 35. And one of our pillars is electoral work. So that's not the only thing that we do, but it's definitely part of our work. With Prop 50, our work had a few different layers. We started with our membership, so we had an internal educational teach-in for our members. We let them, ask their questions, share their concerns. We looked at the maps together, and we actually went over a lot of the talking points provided by Courage, so appreciated that toolkit. We used a lot of the, information that you had provided, especially those talking points around some of the messaging that was being, pushed back. So that was really, really great. And then after we did our teach-in, we discussed with our members, how can we collectively support this? How can we, really get out there? And we saw that they were actually very activated by Prop 50. Our membership base felt and truly believed that they wanted to see some pushback and some fight from the Democrats. And so this was exciting for them. Many of them jumped on. We started by showing our support online. We shared a lot of the amazing graphics that, Courage Cop put out there. And then, we ourselves created our own graphics around voter education in both Spanish and English. It's really important to us that we share information in Spanish in particular, to make sure that we're reflecting our base and we're reflecting the community members that we're talking to. So in OC, it's, generally a purple county, but we were specifically focusing our work in Santa Ana and Anaheim. So, according to census data, like 77% of our residents in Santa Ana are Latina, and 52% of residents in Anaheim are Latina. So, of course, we were trying to do as much political education as possible in both English and Spanish. That was very important to us. Our executive director, Isuri, participated in a live debate with Radio Bilingüe, which is like a bilingual radio station. So we were trying to reach voters in a variety of ways, but we mainly focused on our field program. So we were able to launch a field program, and it was great. Our program was very intentionally crafted around locals. So I think that really made the difference in our field program. Our team, was made up of young folks. We were all between the ages of like 18 and 30. And we collaborated with the Working Families Party and crafted bilingual door literature. And it also had a dedicated section to know your rights information, and of course the website of our local Rapid Response Network, which is Orange County Rapid Response Network, because we knew that our voters were facing really horrible conditions in our communities, and with the current crisis of ICE terrorizing a lot of our neighbors, we didn't want to ignore the realities that they were facing while going to the doors and talking about this. So, yeah, our members that we also hired for our field program were part of those educational teach-ins that we did in the beginning. And then we even had a member that we hired to learn field. So that's looking into the long game, right? So we were hoping to, again, set up infrastructure in the long term, as we know the upcoming battles in 2026. Um, and yeah, we really made it a point to hire local young folks, some who lived in the neighborhoods that we were canvassing. And our goal was to focus on Latina voters that were mid to low propensity. We did a little bit of high as well, but we mainly targeted mid and low propensity voters. And you know, that was a learning curve. We made sure to focus on voter education. Our canvassers were ready to speak to folks that maybe it was their first time voting, and yeah, they were very excited to do that, and we had really good results. I'm excited to share with you.
Thank you, Tanya. So my follow-up question, so obviously these elections were a clear signal, a pushback to this Trump administration. So arguably that's one way that we are trying to hold them accountable. And we've seen some of the results sort of shake the Republicans and the Trump administration, and we'll see what happens with the complications of what came with the shutdown. But as you all are thinking about what we need to do in 2026 to keep people engaged, to keep this sort of enthusiasm, momentum, and also like a sense of hope, a sense that when we do these things together, that we can actually make bigger changes and send these strong signals to our leaders and get them to listen and to take more action on our side. Like, so how are you thinking, and what advice would you give to people as they think about again, like keeping up that energy and the momentum from now through like a whole nother year we've got ahead of us till the 2026 elections? Kelsey.
Yeah, happy to kick it off. I think I'm kind of thinking of different things. One, if you work with folks and communities that are in one of these newly redrawn districts, particularly that have long had a Republican there, there's so much opportunity now, where maybe in the past you've been trying to convince voters. And, I know we had conversations each election cycle of, well, why does my vote matter? Nothing changes. Well, something has changed now. Like, we do have more of an opportunity here. So I think that's momentum to build on when you're having those conversations with voters and remind them of that as they're going into the primary and the general. Like, we have the upper hand. It's still a hard fight, but like, we can make real change and the opportunity is now. So I'm really excited to start having those conversations and having a bit more confidence in that. Not that we couldn't make change anyway, but like, this does make it easier in those areas. So if you have communities or you work in those areas, highly recommend to seize that momentum, which I'm sure you all are. But I think also something that's clear to me, and this is coming up for us in a lot of different ways, not just in the election, but these conversations that I think started with this accountability work last year, that a bunch of orgs were doing great work of like bringing it back to what matters to people, like healthcare and affordability. And the thing is that like this change to Trump, it didn't do anything. It made it worse. And now people are voting to take that away. I mean, we had the government shut down. We had SNAP benefits falter, like bringing these things up in the conversation, but not from a sense of doom and what you saw through Prop 50 is we do have a way to fight back. Like, you can fight back at the ballot box. You can fight back with your vote. That's not just a foregone conclusion that things are going to continue in the way that they have. And I think we have people who, if we're keeping the conversations focused on, for us, we really focus on those key things that matter to their families. And yeah, healthcare, affordability. We've seen people start to win. We have the momentum. Like, we can make a wave continue into next year. That's a lot of what we'll be thinking about in terms of messaging and continuing to connect with voters. And I think just again, really, I think I'm just coming back to that piece of I'm excited to have something to point to people when rightfully they say, but things never change. It's like we just made a really big change that wasn't planned. And it came together as a way to fight back. And we won because we did that together. And like we can do that again. So I think I'm really excited to kind of seize on that messaging and would be curious if others, yeah, I'll stop there because I want to hear what Sky and Tanya have to say, but that's what's
Yeah.
on top of mind.
Thank you. Tanya.
Yeah, thank you. I think I would say I understand that you're tired, but we really don't have the luxury to sit this out. After this election, I think it's great if you're energized and you needed this win or you needed to see that this win can happen. But we have so much more work to do. The fact that we're at this point, right? So we got here, we got to this place in this country, we really have a lot of work to do all around. So I would really encourage people to tap into whatever it is that excites you. There are limitless opportunities to enter into the movement right now. If you're someone who gets energized at the thought of connecting people with food, right? There's mutual aid opportunities. There's organizations like mine, like Chispa. You could join and become a member and have kind of like opportunities presented to you to jump in at the local level. You can go to a training and be a street medic. You can ice watch. You can focus on local issues, focus on local electeds. There are truly limitless opportunities to join. It's great to be creative. It's great to create your own if you don't really like the ones that are out there, right? If you think you could do good in office, I would definitely start learning how you could jump in if that's something you'd want to do and carry on, these progressive values into that space. So I would really encourage people to, understand what gets you excited and jump in it, whether it be, at the government level, at the protest level, at, any level. We need all of it. So that's where I would do it. And I'll pass it back to you.
Here, Tanya. I love that. Sky, how about you?
Oh, I love that. I'm going to echo essentially everything Kelsey and Tanya said. and say that, well, first and foremost, it's okay to rest. If you are tired, it is the end of the year and the holiday season. Not everyone has holidays right now, but there are a lot of holidays if you celebrate one or many of them. So it's okay to rest. Joy is productive, rest is productive, and we encourage you and ourselves to take a minute if you need it. But we do need you, so don't stay away too long. We actually have an election in 6 months. In California, our primary is June 2nd. So let's not wait too long. We'll get our ballots in May. So we're about 6 months away from getting our ballots and getting the opportunity to, as Kelsey said, make decisions about who we want to represent us in these new districts that we now have, in addition to all of the stuff that's specific to California, whether it's our governor, our lieutenant governor, our local county seats. Some of our cities are going to be up. So there's a lot of exciting things right around the corner. So we're going to be working on that in the new year, and we want you to join us in whatever way honors you and your schedule. But also there's so many other ways to get involved at the local level. Tanya listed a bunch of really incredible ones. There's mutual aid. With the government reopening, hopefully people will get food soon, but there's still lots of need for mutual aid and support at food banks and things like that in our local communities. There's also lots of opportunities for organizing around issues that you care about or places that you care about. We started with a presentation from Lindsay from the Working Families Party. We have a Working Families Party in California too. So we're now having regular meetings at different parts of the state. In my region, we met in San Bernardino on Tuesday. I think there was a meeting in Sacramento on Monday. LA met recently. So there's stuff all across the country if you want to learn more about WP in your area. There's also local organizations that do issue specific work. Some of us are some of those people, but there's also others. So there's all sorts of ways to tap in. Stay following Courage California for all of the updates online. But just to say that our families, our neighbors are worth the inconvenience of voting and of organizing. So don't stay on the sidelines too long. We're excited to be in this fight with you, and there's so many different ways to figure out what works for you.
Thank you. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Well, you guys can probably see why I love working with all these people. Thank you, Sky. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Kelsey, so much for all your work. What an incredible past couple months. We built a lot of momentum, a lot of energy, and there's, again, as Tanya mentioned, we still have a ways to go, but there's also limitless opportunities, limitless possibilities about what that looks like. So I just want to close this out really quickly with a couple of things. So I want to underscore that, which is similarly, every action is important at this point. There is so much that is worth doing because we need to take care of each other and look out for each other and fight for each other in a way that we aren't seeing our elected leaders do for us. And that's what I mean when I say Prop 50 in these elections and the elections ahead of us are all really, again, while it is our choices on the ballots are usually between Democrats and Republicans, the story and the importance of every election is about what we as voters do. And a lot of the important work that happens is what happens in between those elections. So I encourage you, Sky, Kelsey, Tanya, all of their organizations are incredible and really specific. And as you heard, they are trusted messengers that represent and live in the communities that they work in. So that's just really important. That's just something that we can't replicate any way else. But I also want to encourage folks, again, like stay tuned. There's going to be more that happens under this administration, both on the negative side, but also in response and on the positive side. And I will say one of the things that I felt most excited about with this election was not just that we won by a 30-point margin, but hearing from Sky and Tanya and Kelsey's teams of like just the enthusiasm of the people who came out to vote yes, we're really excited about it because they saw it both as something that we could do immediately, but also they saw it as a really powerful symbol of what we can do together when we as Californians can band together. So I do mean it when I said it at the top. We don't have to do any of this alone. We are all here and we have to keep in this fight. And we're going to have to take turns. Some of us will have to rest and some of us will have to be on the sidelines and some of us may not be able to turn out for all things, but somebody will. And we also have to make sure that we do that for the people who cannot. So to close out, I do want to give some big thank yous, obviously, to the folks that you've heard from today. So from Lindsay, from Sky, from Tanya, from Kelsey, from Angela and Isidra. We are all part of this larger coalition, this larger movement that was really important to winning these elections, but is also just important to make sure that we are fighting for the issues and the communities that we care about all year round, all the time. I also want to thank Pro Bono ASL for providing ASL interpretation. I also want to thank Yuvia and Ileana for providing Spanish interpretation. And I also want to thank the Courage California team, our members, and our supporters like you who made this one possible. So, you know, again, like news and what's been happening the last week has led to a lot of mixed feelings, a lot of disappointment and frustration. But I want to underscore, it may feel like the election already happened a year ago, but it just happened a week ago. And we do need to take time to celebrate these wins. Because again, this win was about what we as Californians and voters across the country can do when we take control and we take our power and tell our leaders what we want. And we can always demand more. So like Sky said, there are ways I encourage you to stay connected with these organizations, and as Sky rightly promoted, actually a lot of us organizations on this call are also part of the California Working Families Party. So I encourage you to stay connected to these organizations, from the issues you care about to the elections and the candidates and the races you care about as well. There's a lot of work to be done, but I'm confident that we can do this all together. And again, you're not alone. We're going to do this and we're going to continue this fight together. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back with more information, more things to do. So stay tuned. A lot more work ahead of us, but we'll do it all together. So thank you and have a good night.